What's going on, guys, and welcome to today's video. And today we're kind of updating an old video, and that is adding adaptive cruise control to the TRX trucks. Now, all of the TRXs, whether it be base model, level 1, or level 2, all have the forward-facing cameras. And that is one of the sensors there up on the dash. But you only got adaptive cruise control if you option the technology group, which is only available with level 2. So if you'd like to add adaptive cruise control on your base model or level 1 or level 2, this is going to kind of show you how to do it. I'm going to do a good kind of walkthrough on how to install the actual switch, and then unfortunately I am not going to be showing, but you will need Alpha OBD. It is an aftermarket piece of software that you can download, connect to the truck, and add configuration programming codes to basically turn on factory features or configuration, however you want to call it. There is a really good write-up on the RAM TRX group. I will link that down in the description. You can kind of follow along through that whole thread on how to actually do it, but I'll at least have a decent walkthrough on actually installing the switch. So we'll jump in the truck, we'll install the switch, and then get it out on the road. First, let me show you the switch that we need to get. Here is that factory cruise control switch with the adaptive cruise control. Because as we can see here, my factory switch does not have adaptive cruise control, but the new part number does. Enough talking, let's see what we can do on getting this switch installed. First things first, we are going to be pulling the airbag out of the steering wheel. Now, I work with airbags all day long at work, and unfortunately or fortunately am not scared of them. I am very comfortable with removing them, unplugging them. So if you at home are not comfortable with pulling an airbag, definitely unhook the battery, let it sit for a while so the battery and all of the modules can go completely dead. Now, like I said, I'm unfortunately very comfortable with working with airbags, so I am leaving my battery hooked up, but one thing I am doing is pulling the fuse for the horn, because as you are unhooking that airbag, there's a chance the horn switch can get stuck, and then you're sitting there blaring your horn and looking pretty dumb. So I have got my horn fuse pulled, which was this fuse right here. Obviously kind of hard to see, but it was fuse 57 here in the fuse box, which corresponds with the one that I've got the fuse puller on, and I've got that pulled out and set to the side. So now as I'm working on this thing, I'm not gonna get the horn switch stuck and it's gonna be blaring. But like I said, let's jump into it and see what we need to do. So first things first, we are going to get this driver's airbag out of the vehicle. Now in theory, I should be able to push on it now, and yeah, I've got no horn since I've got the fuse pulled. And these airbags are kind of a bear to get pulled out. As you can see, on each side of the steering wheel, we have this small hole. Now there is obviously a Mopar special tool that releases the spring clips on the airbag so you can remove it. But what I found works really good, this is a tire valve stem tool, and it is shaped almost identically to the Mopar airbag removal tool. Like I said, we're gonna take that valve core tool, insert it into that opening, and it is really hard sometimes to push in, and you're feeling for a metal spring that you're going to use that tool to push the spring in, and it will eventually release that airbag. It'll take some kind of fiddling to finally find the right area. But like I said, we just were able to push that in, kind of apply some pressure towards the steering column, if that makes sense. Push it inward and get the spring out. Now we have to do it on the other side, and it is obviously just the same.
You're feeling for that spring because you'll feel a hard spot and then it will push in, and we got the other side. Now hopefully once we get this thing out of here, we will be able to take a better look at it. But now we've got all of our airbag connectors. So let me try to bring you guys in a little bit closer so we can look at these airbag connectors, because we are going to need to pull these connectors off so we can get this airbag out of there. We've got 3 different airbag connectors and then our horn switch connector. So for these airbag connectors, take you a small flat blade screwdriver, and right under the top, we are going to pry this red lock tab up just like that. And then we can simply pull the connector out. Obviously, it's a lot harder right now with one hand trying to record, but again, we get under the red lock tab and lift. Under the red lock tab and lift, and then simply give it a little wiggle and pull those out. Again, very hard with one hand. I'm gonna throw you guys back up on the tripod. Okay, so we've got the horn switch unplugged and all 3 of our airbag inflators unplugged. And we've got one zip tie that holds all of our wiring in place that we will lift up out of the airbag so we can get this thing out of there. This is the spring clips that we were pushing on. If you can see here, we were putting this tool through and we were pushing on those springs like that. And it's just really, really hard to push, but that's what we were doing. Don't really know if you can see what I'm talking about, but we've got 2 springs, 1 on each side, and then we are going through the steering wheel and pushing on those to disengage. So that's what it looks like. It's just really, really hard to get to, but that's why that flat of the valve core tool works really well, since we're pushing in on that. But we've got our airbag set aside, and that's honestly the toughest part of it, is just getting that apart. Next, we've got these small little screw covers here on the back of the steering wheel. Right here, right kind of in between our paddle shifters, we have this small screw cover. You can use your fingernail or a small screwdriver and get those covers off. And then we've got a T20 Torx, one on each side of the steering wheel behind the paddles, like I said. And then we have an additional T20 Torx here, 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 and here. And that should get our whole center switch with the trim off the vehicle. So guys, I've just got that T20 Torx on a screw gun to make a little bit quicker work. Then, like I said, we've got the 4 Torx that we looked at here inside the airbag opening. And then I'll have one more behind the steering wheel on the other side. And luckily all of these screws are the same, so you don't really have to worry about making sure you get them back in the same spot. They're all the same T20 Torx, all the same length. They're all the same. We are now ready to remove our bezel, and I believe we should just be able to lift straight up. We can, once we get it lifted up just enough, we can reach behind and unplug the connectors on each side, left and right, of the steering wheel switches. Once those are unplugged, we can then lift the trim straight out of there. There is some wiring harnesses that are kind of getting hung up on some of these, so you've got to kind of work those around. But we've got the thing out of there. So now all that's left is switching our switch and throwing it all back together. Now guys, here is kind of a good look in the steering wheel. You can see those two connectors that we had to unplug. You can see the little push tab here on the bottom of them that you would push down, pull the connector out. And again, they are on each side. We've got our airbag connectors and our horn switch. So we need to now remove the original cruise control switch, and we've got a couple of really small T10 Torx that we need to pull out. We've got one on this end, and it looks like we've got 3 across this end. Be careful not to lose these things because they are outrageously small. All right, so that front trim piece kind of actually will stay in that steering wheel bezel, so you can just swap your switch. So now we just need to throw our 4 screws back in the switch and we're ready to start going back together with this thing. Now be relatively careful tightening these things down because they are just into some really fragile, thin plastic of that bezel. So don't get too crazy as you're tightening everything down. So now that we've got that switch all put together, it's time to put our trim back on, get all of our T20 Torx. We've got the 2 on the back, obviously, and then those trim covers. And again, you've got to kind of move it around the wiring here at the bottom of the steering wheel and then get that switch set up, pushed into place. We've got the 2 big wiring connectors that we need to get plugged in to the switches. And once we've got our EVIC and cruise control switches plugged in, we can obviously start getting all of our screws back in the trim to the steering wheel, because we had 4 on the inside and then the 2 around the paddle shifter areas. We've got our small little screw covers, and now we are ready to throw that airbag back in. Now it's really cool because the connectors for the airbag are all color coded. You've got a light blue one, a yellow one, and a black one, and those obviously correspond with your yellow, blue, and black airbag inflators. And then last but not least, we have the small little 2-wire horn switch that plugs in here at the top. And then there was the 1 little wiring zip tie holder that we will need to clip back in so the wiring is tucked like it's supposed to be. Don't forget, once you plug it in, you still have to push that yellow lock, or excuse me, you've got to push the red lock tab down in the center to lock in that connector. So we've got our 3 airbag inflators. We've got our single black wire for the single black connector for our horn. Now reinstallation is relatively straightforward. We're going to get this thing as lined up as we can and try to evenly push it into place. And we're looking for both of those spring tabs to pop in. Now if one gets hung up where it won't go in and you've only got one side and you can't get it in, you're going to have to take that tool again and pop the airbag loose again, try to center it up and get it on. But guys, as you can see, we do have the first step of the puzzle done. We have the cruise switch installed, we've got everything back together, and we're ready for programming. Now guys, if you disconnected your battery to pull that airbag, now is the time we need to hook the battery back up and plug your fuse in if you just pulled the fuse. And like I said, we are ready to program this thing. So fired the truck back up, and when I hit the adaptive cruise control button to turn it on, yeah, we've got adaptive cruise control ready. We can go through and change. So in theory, guys, this should be working. Everything is there. Let's go out on the highway and see if it truly does do its thing. And now guys, you may not be the biggest fan of adaptive cruise control, or you may have not ever had it before, but the really cool thing about Jeep, Dodge, Chrysler vehicles is the fact you can still use the normal cruise control. On the normal cruise control buttons, if you use that, it will just work like normal cruise control, hold the speed, not look at the radar sensors. But if you want to then immediately go over and hit your adaptive cruise control, it will work. A lot of manufacturers only will work with adaptive cruise control. There's no way to use a standard cruise control. It's just, you get one option and that's what you get. But with Jeep, Dodge, Chrysler, you always have both options if your vehicle has adaptive cruise control. So for $50, adding adaptive cruise control to me is awesome. On long road trips, it's really, really nice being able to set it and not have to constantly be playing with your speed. We are pulling up on the highway now. This is a closed course, that's why I've got the camera, but we are going to set the speed and yeah, it's currently looking like it's working. We're gonna bump the speed up a little bit so it pulls us into the vehicle in front of us. And yeah, as you can tell, it's already sensing the vehicle in front of us. We're going to, ooh, and now we have a brand new screen called Driver Assist that we didn't before, showing the vehicle in front of us, showing that our set speed is 70 miles an hour, and then showing us how many grid lines are in between. I just increased it to 3 grid lines, the truck's slowing down to maintain speed. So yeah, it's working perfectly. So guys, you can add adaptive cruise control on your TRX that didn't originally have it. And for 50 bucks or 60 bucks, the cost of that switch, to me, that is a absolute no-brainer, because even if you use it one time, that definitely worth the $50. And now this adaptive cruise control is the stop and go type of adaptive cruise, where it will apply the brakes for you all the way down to 0 miles an hour. And I have a vehicle in front of me. I exited the highway. It is applying the brakes. I haven't touched the brakes. We're down to 20, 19, 18. I truly haven't touched the brakes, and we're at 0 miles an hour without me hitting the brakes. That's pretty cool that everything's on the truck ready to work. So yeah guys, the system works flawlessly because it's a factory option that we added to the truck. The factory programming, no messing around, it just works and it's there. So guys, if you've got a base model or level 1 or even level 2 TRX that did not opt for the adaptive cruise control, this is a really cheap and easy way to do it. Really cool deal. I'm really, really excited about it. It'll be fun to play with. And again, this is the stop and go style, where it will come to a complete stop for you at a stoplight, stop sign, whatever. Pretty fun to play with, and adds a awesome, cool feature that you basically have from the factory. It's just not turned on, and we get to fill a few buttons that were blank on this truck or your truck at home. And yeah, we get to add some more options that we probably should have already had from the factory for the price we paid for these things. But that's a different subject for a different day. So guys, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time.